May at the Movies saw us return to a world where apes had replaced humanity. Some would call that heaven, some would call that perfection. But as we get kicked off here for another month, looking back at the movies that were, Tom Pot of the Pop Cult Pod joining me as always. What major recent current event do you think apes would be better at dealing with than humanity?
Now that's a tough one because I very rarely get political,
Mm.
and it would be easy to say something like, "Hey, putting a load of monkeys in the government, what's the difference?" But I'd like to think I'm above that. No, I'm not really. I just should have saved that joke for something else, actually. I don't know. I also don't follow the news very much, but I've been seeing that Trump is currently on trial for soliciting a porn star with company funds or campaign funds or something. I'm not saying the situation would be better handled by a monkey, but it sure would be way more fucking entertaining. They're just like, oh, the monkey fell asleep in the courthouse again. Oh my God, that was embarrassing. How can people vote for this monkey? Just that's all I want. Donald Chimp, is that anything? I don't know. We'll
Donald
figure it
Chimp.
out. There's potential there. Leave it with me. I'm going to flesh this out into something.
I feel the risk with Trump being a monkey is that no matter how horrible he acts, like, because we're assuming he has the same political views and like the same weird hair, and like he is Donald Chimp in every way
Hmm.
except just a monkey. But I feel like the risk with that is that we'd always forgive him because oh,
Yes.
he's so cute.
Yeah. Like, oh, I fell asleep in the corner. Oh.
But also probably would be better at being president. So there is that too. Like, yeah, I thought about this, and I think there's one obvious answer because, like, no matter what, like they would do if given the opportunity to have a portal with New York City, I don't feel that apes would show pictures of 9/11 to people from New York, no matter what. So again, I'm like, that just and that like I love the portal. I love the portal story. It literally brought us back to Neanderthal like state where we're like, you have to do something, show them your dick. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, why? Like, at least apes would be like, I'm gonna jump on this tree and do something really cool. I feel like we get much more wholesome viral moments. They would be equally as viral, but we'd all laugh about them. I don't feel like an ape would twerk for 30 minutes. 30 minutes of twerking. Some people would call that a workout or a twerkout, you might say. Like and they only got stopped when the Gardaí stopped them. They had to be stopped from twerking. Like, I feel like apes just would get bored just by being like, this, what am I doing? So I feel like apes would handle the portal much better. But Tom, enough chit chat about Donald Chimp and the like. We have a very busy month to get to because it is truly
Sure.
summer. The blockbusters are coming thick and they're coming fast, even if they're not everyone is coming to the box office to see them. We're going to be discussing a lot of the big blockbusters and their relative success or lack thereof at the box office. We're going to be talking Fall Guy, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Furiosa, Mad Max Story. We're going to be talking the big kids movies as well that have come out, the family movies, If and Garfield. We're going to be comparing them. And we're also going to be talking about you have taken your turn in our new feature. We
Oh.
watched this since you don't have to, and you've taken one for the team and watched Rebel Moon Part 2, so none of us have to. Thank you for your service, Tom. I cannot
It
wait.
wasn't worth it. I don't want your accolades. It wasn't worth it. I'm not.
But to get us kicked off, as we always do, let's get into the movies, Tom. So let's do this. Let's not beat around the bush any longer. Tom, as we always start on our At the Movies movie show, what is your movie of the month?
I fear I'm going to elongate the show a little bit here because it's one you haven't mentioned yet. And it's one that I kind of forgot because it came out so early in the month. But I kind of thought which film actually stayed with me throughout June or May, I should say. I'm getting ahead of myself. And it was Love Lies Bleeding.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
Which, yeah, this is a second feature from Rose Glass. Previously, she made Saint Maud, which I liked. I didn't love as much as everyone else, but I did think it was a really good film and really interesting. And certainly, I'm going to revisit it now, having seen this. But yeah, For those of you who don't know, it kind of came and went, I think, a bit, unfortunately, both in America and here. It's kind of a big genre film. It's an A24 film, so it feels like one of those films that is there 1 minute and then gone, and people are just talking about, like, why didn't that do better? Which is kind of a recurring thing at the moment at the box office. Love Lies Bleeding follows a lonely gym manager played by Kristen Stewart and a relationship with a new mysterious and ambitious bodybuilder played by Kate O'Brien. However, their love drags them into a world of violence, murder, and crime. I'm keeping it deliberately vague here. Yeah, this was just a great film. I really loved it. It was dark, creepy, and sexual. I don't know why I relate to that. It had it had a really weird, like, pulpy throwback feel to it. Like it's a period piece as well, and is kind of really embodies that. It's also very dramatic, like over the top. Even the title, Love Lies Bleeding, it's very evocative. I think, last month we spoke about Challengers and how Challengers was kind of, I don't know, trash masquerading as art. I kind of feel like this is the opposite of that. This is art masquerading as trash. I think a lot of people would easily dismiss this as like, oh, lesbian erotic thriller, like a kind of, I mean, not that there's not an art to those type of films as well. Like you kind of look at like De Palma films in the 90s and stuff like that, but this is a lot more than that, in my opinion. I will say it's a film that if you go to cinema often and you saw Ethan Coen's film Drive Away Dolls, it's impossible not to compare them. And I thought Drive Away Dolls was such a fall flat in its face movie, whereas this I thought was so much more. Visually, I thought it was really good. There was some really interesting lighting and cinematography that worked really well. I really liked the score. It was a really kind of pulsating, kind of bassy score by Clint Mansell, best known for his work with Darren Aronofsky, which I was like, oh yeah, geez, I forgot about him. I thought that really worked. The hair. I would say the hair and makeup, but the hair is what we're going to talk about. Everyone has such a sweet mullet in this. It's so awesome, except for Ed Harris, who has the most ludicrous hair in any film. Maybe the most ludicrous hair in anything I've ever seen, aside from like Marge Simpson. He's got like, the official term is a skullet, and it's a glorious skullet, I guess. Or I don't know how you grade skullets, but it's something. It's something that you have to see to believe. And I think aside from that, a lot of people are talking about the sex scenes in the movie. And I think they were done, like, again, Rose Lass, a female director, Kate O'Brien, is part of the LGBT community, as is Kristen Stewart. It's very not male gazy, and I think that worked in its favor. It adds to kind of the realism of this. When at times it kind of feels a little unrealistic, and I think that's kind of what worked for it. Performance-wise, Kristen Stewart is excellent. I mean, she's basically just spent the last decade or so proving people wrong that about her Twilight days. Is like, yeah, I can act and I pick interesting shit, and it's continued here. Dave Franco, of all people, who in most movies could just blend into the backdrop for me. Like, I'm like, hey, it's Dave Franco. Oh yeah, he's fine. He's really good in this. He's like this sleazy, weird kind of co-owner of a gun range, along with Ed Harris, who, again, Ed Harris is always able to do that intimidating thing. He kind of wakes up out of bed like a scary lion, and that's something he just easily brings to screen at all times. The real scene stealer, though, is Kate O'Brien, who I've seen in things. This is like a star-making turn for her. She is just an absolute monster on screen as this bodybuilder. And you really just can't take your eyes off her. She's like magnetic in that way. And she really manages to nail what Kristen Stewart would see in her, even though she's not always a good person in this. I thought she was fantastic. It's a weird movie, I would say. It's not going to be for everyone. The audience I saw would audibly gasp at one point because of how extreme the violence was in one scene in particular. There's a little bit of minor body horror in it, very minor, but it's a little bit weird and possibly off-putting. The ending is something that's going to leave a lot of people divided, and I heard like people audibly going like, "What the?" It might have been me saying that as well, actually. I think, but basically, again, if you've seen Saint Maud and the ending of Saint Maud, it kind of played with the idea of like a kind of a metaphor and reality, and there's a little bit of that here as well. I think it worked. I will say I didn't love it initially. It's kind of grown on me, but I think that could put off a few people. So yeah, I don't know. It's a recommend for me, but I don't think everyone's going to love it. But I certainly think it's worth a watch. It's certainly the one that stayed with me the most, so that's why it's my favorite film in May.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, and it wasn't my pick, but it was literally 1 and 1A with this, and I wrestle with this, and this is probably a movie that I might even end up rewatching. Well, I don't know. I might end up rewatching it more than the movie I went with. I really like this, but I also agree that it isn't for everyone. There's Coen Brothers. I also kind of really, it struck me straight away. True Romance as well. It kind of has that vibe if you're into it, where it's
Hmm.
kind of the classic misfit pair, and like you've got Kirsten Stewart's Lou is kind of lost and seeking direction, whereas Katie is sleeping rough. Whereas Lou is coming from an almost privileged background. Katie is sleeping rough, but she's a really firm idea of who she is, and they both complement each other, and they go on this road trip type vibe. And it's got like kind of that. I remember talking about looking forward to this a couple of months ago on the show.
Hmm.
And what I looked forward to was that it's that trashy A24 type vibe that they've kind of embraced since the success of Zola. And I think it really works in terms of like, if you like those movies, you'll love this. What I loved about it was I'd heard that it had during test screenings, it was provoking those kind of visceral reactions. And I love those kind of movies where they're provocative, they're testing the audience, they're challenging people at every turn. Um, and it got that reaction the exact same in my screening too. And I loved it because, again, I'm not sure I loved the scene that was in, because I don't love body horror as well. Just like it can be disgusting to look at. And, you know, my number one pick had some body horror as well, just to kind of give you a little hint as to where I'm going. Um, but again, it just challenges you in every way while also being a really easy watch. It's a messy watch. Again, if you think that it mightn't be for you at any point, then it probably isn't. But if you think it will be, then definitely give it a try. I loved Saint Maud, Rose Glass as well. It kind of lets you know that you're in safe hands here. And I totally agree with the kind of comparison of art masquerading as trash. That's exactly what this is. There is much more to this than is kind of meets the eye, but it never feels like a struggle. It never feels like a lecture. It never feels like even the kind of the focus on this as a kind of LGBTQ centric movie. It doesn't feel like it's trying to make a point or score points by doing so. It's just a very authentic. And I think, again, to kind of just yes, and your point earlier, even the sex scenes aren't provocative. They're not they're not like they just work. They're just real. They're just, and if it has that blend of authenticity with the wildness of you feel like you're having fun at the movies. And I think, I know we got it a bit later than the US did. I think it was released there in March, whereas we got it in May, but it feels like a summer blockbuster. And I loved that weekend as well, because it was released the same day over here as Fall Guy. And I'm like, this is a really fun weekend if you like hot mess movies. And that's what this is. Again, just to kind of back up kind of what you said about the cast, Katie O'Brien nailed it. Love Dave Franco. Ed Harris reminded me a bit of Ordell Roby from Jackie Brown. And not just because of the haircut, though. Like the haircut definitely, like, first off, that's why I'm like, he's Ordell. But there's kind of also the way he is a villain. He's not a clear-cut villain. He's not necessarily malicious. We don't actually see him do much
Hmm.
as a villain. It's just he's methodical, but he's also a madman at the same time, who's constantly looming over it. And there's no one better to kind of play that role than Ed Harris. I want to give a shout out as well to Anna Barishnikov, who absolutely steals the show here as Lou's unshit ex Daisy. She is phenomenal in this, and she gets very little, but she maximizes everything she does.
Definitely.
Again, the score kind of resonated with me, and again, it's kind of it's premium trash, this movie. You know what I mean? Because you've got Clint Mansell there, and it tells you what you kind of need to know about the movie you're in store for. It's just constant tension and suspense throughout. You're just constantly on the edge of your seat. There's never a stage where you get to actually sit back and enjoy the movie, but like, you're not going to the movies, and especially to see a movie called Love Lies Bleeding, for a peaceful, relaxing time. Go see Fall Guy if you want to see a popcorn blockbuster type. You know what I mean? This is something that's going to keep you that way. The tone was a lot more serious than I expected, and I didn't hate it, because, again, that kind of contributed to the premium trash aspect of it, in that um it like it didn't feel like it was just throwaway fun. It didn't feel like kind of a lot of other movie A24 movies in this vein, like Zola's, the aforementioned, and Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. That's kind of
Hmm.
the genre. That's the ballpark this is in. but it felt like kind of more upmarket than that. It felt kind of befitting of the kind of high reputation that comes with seeing that A24 logo appear across the screen at the start of movies. Yeah, I really liked it. I'm glad you picked this as a movie of the month, because I wanted to pick it. I just had one more that kind of blew me away a bit more. So yeah, Love Lies Bleeding, really recommended. If you can go find somewhere to see it now at this stage, because it's got a relatively limited release, but it'll be available pretty much wherever you get movies soon enough. For me, my movie of the month, again, I'm not going to overthink it. It was Furiosa, a Mad Max story. Um, it's been getting mixed reviews, and I was really surprised to see the mixed reviews, because I was like, that's just not the experience that I had in this movie. Loved. I'm ambivalent, honestly, towards the original Mad Max trilogy. Like, it's fine from a nostalgic movie watch. I think Mad Max 2 kind of is the only movie that kind of reaches beyond the parapet. I think the original Mad
Agreed.
Max is an interesting movie, but more from look what they did with how little they had. But you need to know the actual backstory to actually enjoy it. I rewatched it in the run up to this. I'm like, it's just a very tame 70s action movie. Mad Max 2 pushed the boundaries a little bit and kind of was inspirational. Fury Road is a modern masterpiece for what it does and what it achieves. I thought this was an excellent movie. I thought this is like, you can have the same debate about what's better, Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, between like with this and Fury Road. They're very different movies though, and I think I don't mean to cast aspersions or kind of minimize anyone's criticisms of this, but I think a lot of the criticism comes down to the fact that it's not Fury Road. Fury Road is a story that takes place over the course of 3 days. It's something which takes place constantly on the road, it's constantly in motion, and that's what blew people away and made it a cinematic achievement. This is Kill Bill Volume 1 versus Kill Bill Volume 2. Okay. Volume 1 is the just relentless action movie, which is just set piece after set piece after set piece. Volume 2 is okay, we're going to give you the backstory now. We're going to give you the characters. We're going to give you the heart of the movie. And they complement each other in the way that I feel these complement each other, again, because a large part of what I felt Fury Road was missing was the backstory and the intrigue. And again, part of that is its charm. Like, Mad Max movies are just unapologetically Mad Max movies. But what I liked about this was George Miller kind of sets the scene for this world. And it was the one thing that always left me wondering more. It's not that I need to see the politics of everything, and it's not that I need to see the apocalypse moment, but I do like understanding why the world is this way and how it became this way, because essentially it's pitched as in the relatively near future. Um, and I'd love to know how we got from A to B. And the only explanation that George Miller, who, by the way, again, everyone's noting this in every conversation I see about it, but also the director of Babe and Happy Feet, needs to be noted. And also then pulls this out in his late 70s. What a legend. But the only way George Miller describes is all of the bad things that happen basically happened, that we worry happened today, basically came to pass. And like, the Mad Max world has never been one that cared much for world building. It's just kind of accept the scenario and literally strap in for the ride. But what I liked about this movie is that while it's not exhausted, it's at least somewhat partially interested in filling in some of those blanks and gray areas. Like, did they explain how the election of Donald Trump, global warming, and Israel Palestine, how all of those led to a guy in Australia being strapped into a truck with an electric guitar? No, and they don't have to. That's fine. But they at least made inroads and at least filling in some of the world that we're inhabiting, at least. And I like that. For me, I felt this was, again, another comparison that I give it. I watched it and I'm just like, this is Rogue One. It's different. It's very different tone, and it's a prequel, but it's got stuff to say as well. I'm in love with the backstory to this movie too, and I don't think you need to know it to appreciate it. I love how you have to be told though that Anya Taylor-Joy only has 30 lines of dialogue in this movie, because it doesn't feel that way. You feel like you hear exactly all you need. I loved is it Tom Parker as Praetorian Jack? I loved him in this. Chris Hemsworth as well. Like, it's just, again, another element that I've never got from Mad Max is they're having fun. I know we got Nicholas Hoult, was a pretty fun character to spend time with in Fury Road, but again, any of our kind of focus characters are very two-dimensional. And again, that's fine because it's about a world where cars chase each other and explode, try to explode each other. That's okay. I'm not asking for them to be you know, I'll go elsewhere if I want intricate backstory and whatnot. But I did like the fact that Hemsworth dared to be entertaining. He was having an absolute riotous blast in this, and I have a lot of time for Hemsworth, and he's taken a battering since the most recent Thor movie, and I feel that's undeserved because I think he's done his job rather well. But he hasn't necessarily, apart from maybe Extraction, which is kind of his James Bond, hasn't really had that signature role that kind of signifies him as an actor and gets his reputation back to where I feel it should be. And this was that moment where he got to shine, embrace kind of the things that he's picked up from Marvel about like how movies can be fun and enjoyable to watch. But also like he got to prove he's a fucking good actor. I loved it. It's the longest Mad Max movie, and that's again what's kind of getting people's goat up because it is very stop-start. It is very like action, 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 bit of story here, action, 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 and I do get that. But for me, why this is my movie of the month and may end up being like by the end of it, I don't know about top 10, but maybe top 20 movies of the year. I feel that like so there were some scenes in it where only Dune Part 2 had me like kind of sitting back as much and going, this is cinema. And like, I don't care. You can have a few dud scenes. I love movies that, again, dare to be different. I love movies that dare to swing. And even if they miss, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with imperfections. I'll go for the high height. And there's the 15-minute scene in this that throughout the course of it, I'm not going to get into it any further. You can enjoy it for yourself. But there is a scene that goes on 15 minutes, a kind of dirt road chase. It's exactly what you expect from a Mad Max movie. Like, so there's no spoilers in that. But it took 78 days to shoot. And they had over 200 extras. And it felt that epic. And I'm just looking at it go, whoo. And again, then there's another scene later on in the movie where it's more personal. It's more like there's sniping involved and it's more people trying to get around corners and stuff. And I thought that was an amazing action set piece from another side. And then you've got kind of the final showdown scene again, which I won't get into who's involved or how it happens or anything like that. But the final showdown scene was amazingly scripted. And I'm like, the highs were really fucking high here. I really enjoyed it. It was, for me, there are career performances in it. I really appreciated her name escapes you now. I think it's something I can't remember. The younger Furiosa as well, but I want to give props to her. I really enjoyed Furiosa. I have a lot of time for it. I think it's going to age better. I think first viewing, people may just be comparing it to Fury Road, and it mightn't stack up in a lot of people's mind, but I feel it's a taste of preference and taste and what flavor of movie you like. I feel this is going to age a lot better than it currently is. And I'm raging that it's kind of tanking a little bit at the box office because maybe this is the last Mad Max movie we get. And these movies are a treat. They're a joy. I love going to movies like Dune 2 and this, where I'm like, fucking cinema. Yes. Blow me away. Want to watch it in IMAX. Kill me with the sound. Absolutely explode my eyeballs with the action. Love it. And that's kind of what this was. Tom, your own thoughts on Furiosa?
You really didn't do your due diligence there in admitting that George Miller also directed Babe 2 Pig in the City. For God's sake. The fucking, I mean, the Dark Knight of the Babe movies. Like, yeah, no, I would say before I had Love Lies Bleeding, my favorite movie, it was this. And I don't think there's much between them. I will say I had probably more issues with it than you, but I still overall enjoyed it. I do think it's a shame how it's performing. It does seem like, I mean, based on the way things are going, this could be it for Mad Max, at least certainly for a while, certainly in George Miller's lifetime, probably. But you know, at the same time, people forget like Fury Road, and Fury Road came out, that was a bomb. Like it made money, but it did not make a lot of money, and that was the big talk at the time. I again, this I'm trying to. It's really hard, and I think another film we're going to talk about later suffers for the same reason. Is that it's hard not to grade it on the scale of what came before. Like Fury Road was the best action movie of maybe the 21st century. Like, and this is really good. It's not Fury Road. It's not bad because it's not Fury Road. I just felt like there was steps down on things that they've done better in Fury Road, if you know what I mean. I think the visual effects in this, and there was kind of this weird misconception that Fury Road had no effects. It did. They were just really well done and well hidden. This one, there's times where it looks a bit weird digitally for me, especially in that kind of high speed chase scene, which again I think is the highlight of the film for me with the tanker. There's kind of some odd elements, and for me, prequels are something that I kind of dread a lot of the time because it's a lot of those like answering questions I don't feel needed answered. And I think the answers in this are satisfying. I will say that. Although it is weird, like because like again, I think I agree with you with that. The original Mad Max trilogy is like kind of fine. The first one is decent for a low budget movie made in Australia in like the 70s. Road Warrior is a pretty savage sequel. Beyond Thunderdome is bad. Like, and then they made Fury Road, and it was like, what the fuck is this actually Mad Max? Where I feel really bad for the people who saw Fury Road first and were like, I'm gonna go back and watch the rest of them. Oh no, like, but
You know
I
what it
think like
reminds me of? It's like if you made Star Wars in order of like if it was episode 1 was the first ever movie we got,
yes,
and then episode 4 comes out and you're like, what the hell? This is amazing. How did they make that from them?
Like, why did they make a movie about taxes and like in the first one? Like,
so start with this.
But yeah, and I think that's actually an interesting way of looking at this. Like, I think it's better watching this like prequel after the fact. I think it works better as an after the fact prequel as opposed to watching this first, even though I think it could work either way. But I think, like it answered questions that I don't feel we really need answered. Like a lot of people were like, oh my God, they confirmed it takes place in Australia. I was like, yeah, I mean, I know, but they didn't have to confirm that. It's kind of, I mean, like if Chris Hemsworth's accent in this didn't give it away, like. But I will say, I mean, first of all, on the note of Chris Hemsworth, I keep calling him Demetrius Dementus. He's so awesome in this, and I think it's a shame because he really feels like he needs that role that people latch onto, and I think this is probably it. But he really goes all out. He's got like shit teeth in and a big nose on him. He's got the nose that fucking Bradley Cooper had in Maestro, like. So nice to see that still getting work. And just the most bogan accent where he's like, "Go, let's get out of here!" And you're like, "What is that?" like he's trying to like imitate a crow, but also an Aussie accent at the same time. I think that Anya Taylor-Joy is good. It's the thing where like she's only given so much to do, but I think she makes a meal out of a morsel in some ways. I do think, and I got her name just as you were mentioning her, Aaliyah Brown, who plays the young Furiosa. Is excellent. I know they did some digital effects to make it seem more transitionless or a smoother transition between the young and the old. I think that really works. I think the opening of the film with her is some of the strongest parts in the movie for me. But I did like seeing the relationship between the Citadel and this biker gang. I thought that was a really interesting dynamic, and I think that's most of the movie. So that's why it did work for me. And then there's other things where it's just filling in little gaps that I felt not entirely necessary. Like we hear about Gastown and Bullet Town or whatever it's called, or Bullet Farm, and it's that kind of thing where like I'm going to use a very specific example here. Like the Joker doesn't really ever get a definitive origin because let's be honest, if you're going to get an origin for the Joker, it's exactly what you think it is. Seeing the Bullet Farm and it's like, oh, it's a farm that made bullets. Okay. Gastown. Oh, it's a load of gas. Oh, okay, cool.
Why in this future do they not know how to name places? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
why do they look around? Sky Water. And it's like
what do we call the town with gas? Gas Town. Well, no, I got a bit. No, it's Gas Town. I also think it's funny. There is that character, Praetorian Jack, who, because I won't say. George Miller said in an interview that a certain character is in this. I'm not being vague at all when I say that. I assumed. For a while, I was like, "Is that meant to be Max?" Because it really feels like it kind of is.
Yeah.
And I think I think the scenes where him and Furiosa are together is or Furiosa. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa. I think is really good. I think that dynamic really works. Again, I don't know why. I kind of feel like the dynamic where like they're so trusting and almost loving that. Like again, does it make sense that she is so untrusting of Max immediately? But again, there's time in between those two films as well a little bit. Overall, it worked. I thought it worked really well. There was enough new things in here that I enjoyed, and I feel like it's for what it could have been. This could have been a total disaster.
Yeah.
But what I think it is, I think it has the problem of following such a good film with Fury Road that it's just kind of a bit underneath it.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting going back into this world. It's darker than Fury Road, I would say. If only for some of the aspects at the start. But I like the new characters that they introduced. It's such a shame how it's doing, because this seems like such a rich world, and I think this is kind of the film that is, laying the groundwork for like explaining all the lore and these things to expand on in future films, or to just now get all that out of the way for future entries. And now it feels like it's probably not going to happen, and I think that's a real shame. But yeah, no, it's a big recommend. Definitely see it on the biggest, loudest screen you can find, because it's absolutely one of the best action films. Probably going to be one of the best action films this year, for honest. But yeah, no, it's well up there.
And another movie, and we'll get into kind of some of our quick hits now. Another movie that kind of didn't have the reception that we thought it would, and it got a lot of marketing. This movie was everywhere and really should have worked. It's Barbenheimer broken into a funny, charming rom-com. It's Ken meets Kitty Oppenheimer. It's Ryan Gosling back playing comedy again in what we all wanted after we watched Barbie. But again, it just kind of flopped at the box office. We're talking about Fall Guy, of course. Kind of got Ryan Gosling's kind of love letter to the art of stunt work, and kind of a crazed kind of rom-com element in there, kind of caper, and a lot of mad stunts. Again, this movie was everywhere, all the elements set up to succeed. I didn't feel it was a shit movie, so you definitely can't say that like it didn't work because of poor word of mouth. It just never hit with audiences. Tom, what's your thoughts on Fall Guy, and kind of why that, similar to Fury Road, or for Furiosa, it looks like it's just not hitting?
I mean, there's so many, like, I've been reading thoughts and think pieces about this the whole time. I mean, first of all, it seems like we're basically discussing the last of the summer blockbuster season this year. Feels like everything is coming out and falling flat in its face. And I think this is a real tough pill to swallow for Hollywood, this one, because it's like, it's not a bad film. It is probably like the definition of popcorn film.
Yeah.
And there used to be an audience for this, and now there's not. And that is very worrying for a lot of executives. And as for why it's failing, I've seen so many weird takes on it. Some people are like, they thought the IP was stronger than it was. I'm like, most people don't even know what the Fall Guy was or is.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a case of that. I mean, if they actually thought people like they were going to get the Fall Guy fans, unless they were hoping people would have confused it with like the video game. No, there's no Fall Guy fans that are like, oh yes, the Lee Majors one is going back. No one's doing that.
Finally.
Yeah, like finally he's back, Lee Majors. So but aside from that, why did it fail? I mean, I think they're not doing it any favors as well. Like, studios have done such a bad job of catering post-COVID to audiences that, hey, the film's going to be available on streaming. So this went on streaming in like less than 3 weeks, a bit over 2 weeks. So you're going to make money back in the short term, but long term you're just convincing audiences that I'll catch it on demand. The most pirated movie I think of the last year was Godzilla -1, and that's because it was not available anywhere. Learn from that instead of just panicking. They keep pressing. This keeps happening. They keep shortening the release windows, and then what's going to happen? Disney will put out a Marvel movie, and people will say, "Hey, why would I watch that when it's going to be on Disney Plus in 2 weeks?" That's what's going to keep happening. So anyway, yeah, I could go on about that all day, but as for this, it's like, I find it weird that a lot of people are championing it as like, this is, what's wrong? You all said you wanted original films and romantic films. I'm like, is this the hill we're going to die on for this film? Like, it's decent. It is fun. It's what blockbuster popcorn movies should be. But I wrote down, it's an airplane film.
Yeah. Yes. I thought the exact same thing. Yes.
You watch it, you enjoy it, then you just move off, you grab your luggage, you head out, and then you forget until someone's like, "Oh yeah, I watched that on an airplane." Yes. And that sounds really insulting, and I don't mean it to. What I mean is, I just enjoyed it for what it was. I think Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling have great chemistry in it. Gosling getting to flex his comedic muscle is always welcome. He's so damn good at it, and he's fantastic in this. The action scenes are good. On its stunt team and the stunt work involved, and evidently they did a lot of the stunts. it really doesn't look like it. Like that, I don't know. Is it like a weird digital look a lot of films have now, where a lot of things just look kind of plasticky? I don't know, it was the way it was shot or overlays or effects they put over it. Just looked really weird, and it didn't convince me in that way, and it makes the action feel a bit hollow for me. I don't know, but that was a shame. The story was fun enough, even though I think it's a little bit of a mess. The movie is longer than it needs to be, in my opinion. I was kind of falling asleep by the end, if I'm honest. Yeah, it feels like a film you could wait for on streaming, and I think that's the problem. And I think if had it been on streaming, it would be probably a massive hit. If it went there like straight to Netflix, I think everyone will be talking about how good it was. I think the concept is good. I think the romance was genuinely well done. That was more surprising. I didn't expect it to be as romantic or as well done as it was. But I'd say it this way, and this sounds very damning as well. It was David Leitch who gave us Bullet Train, and I kind of feel the same way about that film that I felt about this, which is that it's fine, it's enjoyable. I'm in no rush to ever see it again. I'd recommend it to others, but it just because it's an easy, unchallenging watch, it's kind of forgettable. Like I don't think next year I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember the Fall Guy. Not really. It kind of feels like a film that had it been better honed and had been directed by someone like say like Shane Black, this could have been something better than it was. But as a disposable, entertaining popcorn film, it does what it says on the tin. It's a Ron Seal movie. Like it's fine.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I the exact same thought. I'm like, airplane movie. I'm like, it doesn't matter. You're never going to think about it again, but you had a good flight and it's fine. Like or a Saturday night movie where you're watching with, your missus who like, doesn't watch movies and is checking her phone half the time, but will look up every now and then. And it's like, it's grand.
Yeah.
It's grand. Like, it's fine. If you don't care about like, watching a great movie and you just want to see something, this is definitely something. I kind of feel like I know why it didn't succeed because it just feels at times like I like this for what it's worth. I'll go out there and give my verdict at the start. This is a big, dumb, shameless, hot mess that is so unapologetically itself that you can't but let it worm its way into your heart. Okay. Eventually it wins you over just by being so Fall Guy in the end. Like it just commits to the bit so much, but the problem is that it's just not clear what's going on at times. So it reminds me at times of 21 Jump Street with a very kind of, it feels very improvised at times, but it also feels very polished. You know what I mean? Because the cast is so good. A lot of the success of this movie rests on the talent's head and them kind of bringing laughs where needed. But you have really good talent in Gosling, Blunt, and Hannah Waddingham deserves a shout out. So they make it work. It was very interesting to see Hannah Waddingham in a kind of shitty person role. You know what I mean? And that's just not where we kind of see her since her turn in Game of Thrones. She tends like since she's like being on Ted Lasso, we kind of see that character played out a lot, and it was nice to see her get to show her range. It is tonally a bit all over the place. Like the soundtrack feels like the Radio Nova breakfast show with like AC/DC in the darkness. It's like, we're just going to give you lowest common denominator dad rock. It is exactly what you expect, but like you're on your way to work listening to the radio, so you're not ready to be challenged. So, and I never really felt grounded within the world in the way that I do in a lot of these. I never felt like, bought into the character. I thought the story itself kind of lacks focus at times. And it was very loud about kind of its intentions in a way that I kind of, the opposite way that I spoke about Love Lies Bleeding there earlier on, because like they were very much, there was a whole sequence where they're like, did you know that there's no Oscars for stunts? And it's just like, yeah, okay, we get it. Yeah, I know you really appreciate stunts and you're making a point with this movie. And look, it is like a love letter to stunt people, and I appreciate that Chris O'Hara was the first ever person who was cast in the role of stunt designer, which again kind of shows they've actually paid someone to kind of do that job and kind of go out of their way to respect stunt work as an art within itself, and they hired for Gosling as well. They're just throwing money at stunt people because they deserve to get paid. They hired 4 stunt doubles for Gosling himself. But again, like it's the one thing I guess I had an issue with this movie was, and I didn't have an issue. I had fun at this movie. It was fine. It got me eventually, but I didn't laugh as much as I expected to laugh. You know, and it's just simple as that. It's just the jokes didn't pop. You know, if the jokes popped in the way that they were supposed to, then it would. But I'm like, there was a sequence early into the movie where she just keeps getting him to repeat the same scene. And I'm like, that scene is really funny if the lines he's delivering or the stunt he has to do is really funny, you know. But I'm just kind of like, clever bit. But I'm not actually laughing. I'm not actually doubled over. And nobody was in the screening that I was watching either. And that's kind of the problem. So I feel like I know why this wasn't a success, and it's because it didn't fully work as a movie. And it's not, there's no like existential threat of cinema here. I feel like this is just a grand movie. It got a major push, and again, you look at Gosling, you look at, you know, Emily Blunt, and you're like, they're coming off Barbie and Oppenheimer. And I'm like, yeah, but we saw the great movie they were in. And this wasn't a great movie they were in. So why would we see this? And why would this get a massive box office? It's fine. It's just fine. You'll enjoy it if you watch it. You definitely shouldn't go out of your way to watch it. But if it's on, you'll have a fine time. And I think that's all there is. I think it's much ado about nothing here when it comes to Fall Guy. A movie that did have I don't know about expectations, because I think for me, this kind of crept up on me. I don't think it's a sequel that anyone was asking for. Was Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And between this, Godzilla X Kong and Monkey Man, it's Summer of the Apes. And they're all coming back. So this is kind of a reboot of kind of a franchise that seemed to me to have a really perfect ending and a full stop on it put on it with War of the Planet of the Apes. And the kind of the challenge here, I guess, is, can this reignite the fire, or will it end up kind of like the Hunger Games, where it's like, it definitely is extra content in this world. Like, I cannot deny that it is a movie that happened that I watched. What were your thoughts on Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes? Because I rewatched the 3 movies beforehand, and I'm like, they just don't miss with these movies. They just, whatever they've done with these reboots, in the same way, when I watched the first Halloween movie, I'm like, yeah, you've got it. You've recaptured the moment, the original Halloween reboot, and then they fucked it with the 2 sequels.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
but with these, I'm like, they've got the essence of this. Were they able to re-grab the magic for you? What were your thoughts on Kingdom?
Well, yeah. Again, it has the same problem I had with Furiosa, but I think it's Furiosa. Even more so with this one. Like, those, especially the Matt Reeves ones, they were like the best blockbusters for me. Like, I think like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was genuinely one of the best blockbusters of the last decade. And here, it's okay. It's decent. There's stuff that works in it, but again, it is that case where they did have a perfect ending. Doesn't feel like there's really a story to tell here massively, in my opinion. The thing is that, like, since they did a prequel to Rise of Planet of the Apes, and basically that was that being a prequel at all was kind of a fluke, from my understanding. It was the producer just clipped out he clipped out stories from newspapers that he found interesting, and one of the stories was about someone working on an Alzheimer's cure with monkeys, and then someone was like, "Hey, that could be a Planet of the Apes prequel," and there you had it. And basically, it's like, that's good, and it's great that we got the origin of how the apes came to be taking over the planet. We got that. The problem is, there's like 3,000 years in the future where they have to catch up to the regular Planet of the Apes storyline if they really wanted to. But it seems like the storyline will be a lot of the same, and that's kind of the problem with Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I think the big problem is that it has a really tough task, first of all, living up to those Matt Reeves movies. Caesar was such a good three-dimensional character, and granted, I don't think we got all that either in the first film in the new series. But this one, first of all, way too long for what it was. I don't think the story justified the runtime at all. Especially in the first half, it's very slow. And I think the problem is that a slow start is okay if it's like setting up a world. I felt like this was just setting up a world we were already familiar with, though.
Yeah.
Because it was like, oh, the monkeys are living in, tree houses. And it's like, yeah, well, we saw that, in the last one. I know it's 300 years later. What else has changed? Oh, they're an eagle tribe. Okay, well, that doesn't really matter as you get into the film either. So it just kind of seemed a little bit irrelevant in the larger scope of the movie, like mostly the opening. I think the other thing is the characters just aren't as gripping. Our lead is Noah. I just didn't find him to have much depth to him. He was just kind of boring, and he has friends who are pretty forgettable. Overall, there was a character I liked called Raka, who was an orangutan, and I think the most interesting thing that the that the film leans into. And I think it a cynical me would say that they just lean into this so they can justify it, like, see, it is related to the last films, is that Caesar's teachings have kind of become religion. And that's an interesting idea because our character of Raka like follows the teachings of Caesar like as they would have played out. And then our villain, Proxima Caesar, kind of distorts those teachings for his own benefit. And that's an interesting idea, a kind of conflict of religion. And I feel like the movie either doesn't want to go in on that or isn't confident enough to have something to say about that, to really explore the idea of, hey, here's this new civilization, and guess what? As soon as they introduce religion, conflict. And that would be a great metaphor for life. But they don't really have the balls to do that, or the insight, or I don't know. But aside from that, like, we have a human character. Okay. The human character was just there because they needed to have the human ape dynamic and have it be a little bit different to the last one. But if you're asking me, like, was this a relationship I cared about? Was this a character I cared about? Not at all.
Yeah.
There's not much to that character. It feels like a lot of the movie, and I think that my problem is that, like, our villain, everyone in this is a lesser version of what we had in the last few films. I mean, I think it's very notable with Proxima Caesar, who is a decent character. I don't think he's terrible, but coming off like a character like Koba, who like is, in my opinion, one of the best villains because he is a justifiable villain where actually you're like, he's not wrong. But here it's like, oh, he's just kind of an asshole and wants power. Okay, cool. And the other thing is, like, I think that it feels like, again, as much as it wants to link to the last films, there's moments where I'm like kind of confused. Like, he's at one point they're like surprised about certain things that they're seeing as if for the first time, and I'm like, the other monkey saw this 300 years ago. How have you not encountered this before? And it felt like the world hadn't moved on enough to justify a new story. And that's a big problem for me when you're doing this. And I think the other problem is that what I think it's setting up, and a lot of the second half feels kind of like set up, I don't see how it's going to be any different to the last trilogy anyway. Like, it feels like, hey, it might be leaning towards some sort of civil war with the apes. And it's like, you mean like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes? Oh, well, actually, it's setting up a war between the humans, like war for the Planet of the Apes. And I think that's the problem. It doesn't do enough to justify its existence. It doesn't feel distinct enough from the other films. It's okay. If you go into it with that high a bar as the other films, you're going to be disappointed. I give them a chance. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and hope that the sequels are going to be better, because this one is doing okay. Like, if this came out a decade ago and did these numbers, it'd be a flop. But given current Hollywood, it's like, hey, it's doing good. Yeah. So I don't know. Underwhelmed, I would say. I wanted more out of it. It's not bad. It's just kind of okay and fine, unfortunately.
I agree. I feel this is going to end up like when we reviewed Ted Lasso, where, like, when we actually had the experience of watching it, we're like, yeah, it's fine. But then when we talked about it and got into the things we liked, we're like, I actually think I hate this. But like, in terms of like Kingdom, yeah, I think what worked for me when I watched the like kind of the initial reboot trilogy was, they really never overthought the story. They just gave us what we wanted and they executed it really well. They kept the story relatively simple, basic setup, and then just execute the shit out of it, and really, really well made movies. For me, there's a lot to say for overthinking it, but you should also think enough. You know what I mean? You should think a little bit. And that's kind of what this is missing, because there's a lot of stuff that's interesting here and thrown at the wall. And for me, I like this movie. I enjoyed it. And there's enough here to enjoy. But then there's 145 minutes of it. And I'm like, I really enjoyed about 90 to 100 minutes of this. And then I had to sit there for 45 and be pissed off. And that's kind of the thing that is going to sit with me. Like, things I enjoyed about it. Like, I did like being like in the world decades after kind of the conflict had happened. Apes have won. We get to see what the world rebuilt looks like, kind of, because that's where the original or the reboot trilogy left us. And kind of I'm interested in seeing that. The action sequences were very, very good. They were very well executed. They get how to do this, and they have the right people in the room, and they get this. I also liked it being kind of, I found it refreshing after watching two intense kind of balls to the wall action movies like Dawn and War, Planet of the Apes, to kind of strip it back and go back to characters, to character based, and like kind of rebuild these new characters, which I felt were interesting, if not blowing me away. I felt we missed like being grounded in the way that kind of we were with Caesar. Like we got to see Caesar from being that kind of laboratory tested ape to kind of becoming this dominant visionary and
Yeah.
almost inspirational leader. That was missed. I thought it was interesting the way they kind of went for, yeah, the kind of almost worship of him, and how, even these heroic people can become false idols if enough time passes, and people will, it's that whole thing of even the devil can cite scripture for its worth, like, for his own worth. Any one of us can kind of take the message of someone that is considered iconic, and we can just twist it to mean whatever we want it to mean. But yeah, they just didn't dig in enough to that, and it just felt like they were just introducing those concepts. What bothered me about this movie was it felt cocksure in a way the movies never felt cocksure before, because there was a passion in the reboot trilogy for making the movies. Whereas now I feel like these movies went in knowing that I'd rewatched it. No, obviously not me personally, but like knowing that the people rewatched it, knowing, oh, these movies are actually class, and just assumed that it would be good enough that they could just not only make a movie that is way too long and doesn't justify its runtime, but they just assume that everything's going to work and we're going to buy whatever they sell. And that's where it felt in poor taste to me. And it just, there was a disconnect between the reboot trilogy and this. I didn't like the way that they felt insecure and they had to bring up humans again, just leave out of it. It's like, it reminds me of kind of the mid to late seasons of The Walking Dead, where every time, no matter what they did, they had to come back to the whole storyline of, but what if humans are the real problem? And it's like, no, like, we don't care. We're happy to have a movie where humanity's been defeated. We watched that happen. Like, why are they coming back? Like, I don't, like, in the ending, I was like, I don't care about this. But having said that, had they like shaved a half hour off this and kind of left me like all killer, no filler, then maybe I'd have bought it. Maybe I'd have been interested enough in it, and maybe I'd have been like, okay, maybe you have something to say here. But again, like, they've just done it, like you said, they've just done all of this before. So like, yeah, and again, like, even the kind of, I didn't care about any of the human characters. I didn't care about the character who kind of was just parroting what I said. That was just like, yeah, they won, let's just go with what their world is, and let's not cause any trouble. I just didn't care. And again, there's a lot of potential here. I feel they've got enough meat on the bones. Like, I do feel like within this, they're looking to build a trilogy that should have perhaps been one movie. Like, I
Mm.
do feel there's enough in what they have, and there's enough positives that I'm like, over the course of 3 movies, I'll agree that there's a story worth telling here. But you may not be able to convince me that they should have been 3 movies, And I feel like that's where I felt a bit cheap, a bit monetized, a bit like the Hunger Games kind of catching fire prequel, in that you're just making it because you're like, you were throwing a dart at the wall of the IP that exists in your universe, and you're like, Planet of the Apes, you haven't made one of them in a while, let's just stick some people on it. And there was enough of the right people in the room to make this worthwhile. But again, I just feel like the trilogy that we end up getting from this, and I feel confident we will end up amounting to one really good movie. And then we will
Mm.
have like 2 movies worth of unnecessary shite that we have to sit through to justify spanning this out to make 3 movies. And again, I'm just wondering if they can keep enough goodwill across the span of that, or like, we're gonna see it. We're movie freaks anyway. We see everything. But like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, in a world where the stars of Barbie and Oppenheimer do a rom-com and it absolutely flops at the box office, with everything we've discussed, I don't know if the audience is going to be that up for it either. So
I think you have to be like extra cynical about it as well, because like this is like since Disney acquired Fox, and it does feel like they're like, well, what can we do with this? What do Fox have that we can use? Oh, they're making like a Maze Runner prequel or whatever. Oh, here's our apes. Let's make more apes. And then I saw someone was like, yeah, well, we've got this is a whole 9 film arc. I'm like, there's no way when you made the first Rise of Planet of the Apes that you were like, yeah, this would be 9 films. No, you didn't. It's like, come on. So I don't know. I'm in agreement with you there. I don't know, is there enough to justify a whole year? Eventually, they're gonna have to catch up to like the Charlton Heston one, or just remake that. I guess I don't know.
yeah, and I feel that may be where it goes. Like, this may be an aborted tree or trilogy attempt, like where eventually it just doesn't, the second one just doesn't work. But look, we'll see, and we'll be there either way. Last one, and we'll keep as brief as we can. We won't do full reviews of this because I don't think it merits it really. There were two family movies released, If and Garfield. We saw them both. Again, just too much time on our hands. But we did see them both in the cinema. Tom, if you were to recommend people listening now, they're going to see a movie with the kids, or they just want to see a good family movie, would you recommend either of these, both, or would you recommend one over the other? What are your general kind of thoughts when you kind of pick
Take the kids to Garfield. Take the kids to Garfield.
Really?
Kids are going to be so fucking bored of it. Yeah. I'm sorry. I was like it's a family movie, but it's clearly a movie made by adults, with an adult view of nostalgic looking back. They might like the cute characters. They might be like, "Hey, oh no, that's cute," but like, there's also like it's more a film. It's less a film of kids playing with imaginary friends than it is adults looking back at their inner child. And kids are going to be bored by that.
Yeah.
Garfield, it's funny cat eats food. It's not deep. It's not amazing. I should say as well, I saw both of these like before they were screened for critics. So I had an interesting reaction where like normally I'm like, oh, going into it hearing bad reviews or good reviews. I just had the like totally blank. If I was like, this isn't very good, is it? Garfield, I was like, oh, this is better than expected. But then again, I went in so bottom low. I was like, why am I seeing Garfield? Oh, I might as well. And again, I'm not like a diehard Garfield fan. But if you were, I'm like, this doesn't feel like Garfield's. Like Garfield, what do you remember about Garfield? He eats lasagna and sits and does nothing. And here it's like, he's going on a big adventure. Garfield's biggest adventure yet. And you're like, why? Why is he going on a big adventure? It's like Garfield as a heist movie. It's like, what is this? Like, who pitched that in the room? Was it like they definitely had a movie that was like, oh, it's a heist movie with animals, and someone was like, no, people aren't going to go unless they know who it is, and they're like, Garfield, okay, fine. And there's some nice emotional moments in Garfield. There's much more emotional moments in If. It is very manipulative in If, but I will say it seemingly worked. The screening I was at, people were kind of sniffling. But it was also all adults seeing it. So take that for what it's worth. I don't think either of them is great. Having taught kids, I have not heard anyone talk about If. I've heard a few people say they want to see Garfield, they've seen Garfield. So yeah, I would say if you're going to take kids to see something, see Garfield. It's also shorter, I think. So, that's a bonus.
Yeah, I think that's a good show. No, I hadn't thought about it kind of directly in that way, but I think that's a good show for the kids. I think Garfield is better. For the adults, If is better. But also, like, again, the options there to watch any other movie in existence. Like, so many streamers have so many movies, and you can just spend your time.
Take your kids to the Furiosa. Go on.
They need to learn sometime. Garfield, it was baffling because, like you say, like there was one of the most popular ever episodes of Garfield was a piss take where Garfield ended up in an action-packed cartoon, which is funny because that's the purpose of Garfield, is that he does nothing and it's just a whimsical look at the everyday banalities of life, and like, again, that's what this is. It's an action movie, and it's like, this is not Garfield. It is just, again, it's just, you picked Garfield because it's colorful. It's so random, like the casting, it's dartboard casting. Like, it's like, how do you answer the question, who do we get to play Chris Pratt's dad with? Samuel L. Jackson. Like, who thought that? Where is that coming from? I know they're voice actors. That's not the point. But like, even their voices, there's no way. Harvey Guillen, who again, a lot of people who watch What We Do in the Shadows may know him as Guillermo. The most excessive waste of money since Vin Diesel saying, I am Groot in Marvel, because he plays Odie, who you may remember doesn't talk. It is literally voice casting for a really, really talented and now getting more and more successful actor to basically go, Ruff! That's it.
I knew he was in the film. I didn't know he voiced Odie. What? That's ridiculous.
That's Odie. Why did you pay that man? You could have. I would have done it.
That's money laundering. Someone needs to investigate that. That's insane.
It really is. I hated the Garfield movie. I didn't laugh once. I didn't enjoy it whatsoever. It's exactly what you think it's going to be. It's blatant. It's subtle as a brick, kind of with nods to the old series. You have a really overly convoluted plot that nobody is asking for or cares about. You've got the little forced modern references. They're like, is that a dating app you see there? kids, I understand things, and it's like you're appealing to 8-year-olds. They're not on Tinder, you fucking weirdo. And then it's like it didn't work. It's not good. Don't go see it. If it's okay, it's fine. It's not for kids. I agree. It is made for adults. It invites comparison with Inside Out because it is a rip off of the Bing Bong story in Inside Out. Like that is literally what happened. Like there's no way John Krasinski saw this and didn't like he watched Inside Out and he goes, "What if I made a whole movie about forgetting about imaginary friends?" That's what this is. And don't go there, mate. Don't go there. I'm going to talk about Inside Out in a little bit, and just don't go there because it just doesn't stand up. Because the thing that made Inside Out work was that it made such complicated ideas so simple to understand. It took you on that journey. A 5-year-old kid can watch it, or a 40-year-old adult, and it will just make whatever age you are, whatever stage your development you are. I watched it there not too recently, with an ex-partner, and I like they had an emotional reaction to it in a way that they've never seen it before, and they had an emotional reaction to it, and in the way that I had an emotional reaction to it as an adult. But then I turned around and I was like, I'd love if I had a kid to show them this Inside Out as a 5-year-old, and like have that shape their brain and shape the way they see the world. Like it's a beautiful movie. This is not that. Like it just doesn't. It feels like two movies awkwardly mashed together that don't really work or flow like you wanted to. Like there's a really nice story with, like, I was generally watching the start of the movie going, am I thinking of the same trailers for this? Like I don't remember that. Like how does Ryan Reynolds come into this? What happens with this? Like where's that come from? And again, like it just doesn't hit in terms of like there's no characters you walk away with thinking about. There's no one that really captures the imagination. There's loads of cute moments. It is very manipulative. It does make people cry. Like if you're going in to have a cry, this will do the job. Like if that's what you want from the movies, it'll get you there. But it doesn't feel like a satisfying earned cry at any stage. Like you get when you cry it Inside Out at the storyline that this is ripping off. The ending is quite clever. I enjoyed it. I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's a nice reveal. It's again, you probably will see it coming.
It's very obvious though.
Yeah, like again,
in fact, I'd actually say there's even like visually, if you're paying attention, it even reveals what's going to happen. It's I don't know. I mean, even from the first trailer, people were calling this one.
Yeah, exactly. But like again, it's like it comes together and answers the story nicely. And again, you'll get it. I did like the soundtrack, although it did play into the manipulative side. Like it's very up on steroids. You know what I mean? At all points. Like, but it worked. Like to a point. Like John Krasinski is a very thoughtful filmmaker. And he, like, again, even when his stuff doesn't land, he's a writer who understands the domesticity and how to tell that story. And even if he's telling it in fantastical ways, like, obviously it's very, very different with why am I forgetting this horror movie now?
Quiet Place.
Quiet Place, yeah. With the Quiet Place series, it's obviously a very different tone, but the Quiet Place works because of the domestic vibe that they bring to it, you know what I mean? And the family element, and you care about the heart of the characters. So he gets that quite a bit. So I feel that even when John Krasinski movies don't work, there'll always be a redeeming factor there. So there is some substance to this. It's not awful. If you're gonna pick between the two, go see If. But you can also just not and spend your time watching Inside Out again, because Inside Out's amazing and they've got a sequel next month. They're the new movies anyway, but they're not the only new movie. They're just the movies I saw, because we've introduced a new segment as of last month when Tom made me watch My Irish Wish, and I decided I have to get him back on this. So I'm going to create I'm the producer, so I'm going to create a segment for this. It's called We Watch This So You Don't Have To. And Tom, I nominated you to watch Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, and tell us what we need to know so we don't have to watch it instead. So there is spoilers for this, guys, just a heads up, but it's Zack Snyder's new Netflix movie. Who gives a shit?
I think what they need to know is this is fundamentally forever altered our relationship. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again after this. I will say, okay, let me say a few nice things first. I don't hate Zack Snyder, okay? He seems like a nice enough guy. He's made some decent films I liked early on. He helped me get into comic books, so I owe him that. I saw the first Rebel Moon on Christmas Day, and I said it pretty much kind of ruined my Christmas. Like I was
Yeah.
really genuinely just like, wow, this kind of what am I doing with my time and life and everything? Merry Christmas to me, And then I was like, okay, here part two. Well, hopefully the action packed part two. No, no, not at all. Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scaregiver. I actually just wrote down mistakenly Rebel Moon Part 2, which is more entertaining than the title one, which is The Scaregiver, which is not as cool as you think, Zach. Because, like, people get scares in really dumb ways. You could stub your toe on like an ironing board and be like, oh, The Scaregiver. Just fucking ridiculous title. Okay, so, okay. I'm trying to compose myself here. This skip ahead another hour or I'll still be ranting about this, by the way. So it loses me so quickly. It has really long exposition from the Anthony Hopkins robot, which a character name I refuse to learn. Is it James? It's something really not robotic. I remember that much. It's I swear to God, you could convince me this was like an outtake from Thor with him flubbing his lines with some of the place names. It's like embarrassing. Basically, he's like, this is what happened, and I can't remember any of it. I'm watching it and being like, I did see Rebel Moon Part 1. Like I'm like, I don't really remember. The only thing that really threw me off, like the fact that this wasn't from Thor, was I didn't recognize any of the character names, and I was like, who? What planet? What? So I had to read the Wikipedia page for Rebel Moon Part 1. That's how exciting Rebel Moon Part 1 was. And this movie made me miss Rebel Moon Part 1, by the way, genuinely. It's worse. It is much, much worse. In case you missed Rebel Moon Part 1, basically they killed the big bad guy, played by Ed Skrein. I don't know what his name is, doesn't matter. In the last film, but they reveal like immediately that he's alive, because fucking drama. The stupid thing is that he wakes up in the start of this movie and he dramatically says, "The Scaregiver is on Velt," as if that's meant to mean anything to any of us.
No, it isn't.
Which after looking at Wikipedia, what that basically means is, hey, the character from the first film, she's on the planet she was on at the start of the last film. So basically, they just killed off your man, then brought him back as the villain, and then started from where we started with the first one. So that's great. Great character arc there, Zach. Well done. I have to say as well, this might seem like trivial info, but yeah, they basically went back to the first film. Same character, same stakes. They put together a team. That was the whole point of Rebel Moon Part 1. But I will say, yeah, like I said, I can't remember any of the character names. I will say Cora is our lead character. I've written these down. She has a love interest called Gunner. Don't worry, we'll get a lot of backstory on all these characters. Don't worry, all these lovable characters. And if that doesn't get you excited, wait till you hear that these noble warriors are planning on doing, because they're gone to this planet Velt, who is a poor harvesting planet, and they're going to help them harvest the shit out of some crops. They have 3 days to harvest crops. And they're like, that's impossible. It's not, spoiler. Because basically, like, for those who are like, why is this a big thing in this futuristic planet? Why is it all about harvesting crop for the evil empire? It's because that was the plot of Seven Samurai, and a lot of the Kurosawa films were the base for Star Wars. And Zach was like, hey, it makes perfect sense to them to be able to build all this futuristic shit and bring people back from the dead. But what the evil empire really can't do is come up with some way of automating grain. I don't know. So anyway, don't worry, because we're going to get a lot of slow motion harvesting grain footage. I wish I was joking. They're like using the sickles. It's got this all like, the dramatic choir music of like, ah! Or we're just watching grain for about 5 minutes. It's embarrassing. So they're fighting not the, I keep calling the Empire, the Imperium, because
it's the Empire. Yeah.
Find and replace in a script. So they won't risk losing the crop by attacking this planet. So yeah, figure that out. Apparently, crop is so it's. Here's the thing. Again, think of something like Dune, where it's like spice. That's valuable. It's a commodity. You can only get there. No, this is just random normal grain. I don't know why it's so valuable to them. They could easily have written around that. But hey, forget all that. It's time for some tragic backstory. Cora, who is our lead character, in case you've forgotten her name, like I would have if I hadn't written it down, admits she was involved with the killing of the royal family of the Mother World to put her adoptive father, Belisarius, on the throne. Oh God, these names. We need to talk about this scene. This is a scene where Zack Snyder really wants you to know he's read up on ancient Rome. Because you know how Caesar was stabbed to death by loads of people? That's exactly what happens here. We get loads of shots of the crown dramatically hitting the ground.
Oh, slow motion
for the monarchy. Slow motion.
Of
slow
course.
motion.
Yeah,
Let's assume it's all in slow motion unless I say otherwise, to be honest. It's got my favorite bit of stupid shit is in this scene as well. There's an orchestra with bags over their heads. Not watching this happen. Playing, so the music is diegetic. They're playing the music to the assassination, but they're playing like really tense music, and then they stop, and then as your one tries to escape, they change the exciting music so they can see through the bag. So why did they put an orchestra? I don't know why there's literally an orchestra for no reason. It's not like they're in like some antique hall. They're in like a port where you're getting onto a ship to leave. It would be like an orchestra playing at a bus station. It's embarrassing. It's so stupid. But anyway,
also like reacting to like as you get on the bus, like you're sitting at the bus stop and they're just like
yeah,
and then like so you go to get up and they're like
but that means someone must have gone to the orchestra and say, hey, we need some really tense dramatic music when we kill the king. Oh yeah, cool, yeah, perfect. Could you put bags over your head? We won't be able to see what's going on. Yeah, but you can react. Just you know what's going on. Oh, for fuck's sake. Then, by the way, so the king is dead, the queen is dead, but the little princess, the daughter, is there, and Cora holds her gun, hesitates, and shoots her. Our hero, ladies and gentlemen, she killed a tiny little girl, and don't worry, the girl is actually alive, but she still killed her intentionally. So it's hard to be like, oh, thank God, Cora's not so bad after all. You had no idea she was going to survive. You just assumed she was dead for the whole film. In fact, anytime you reveal his backstory, you leave out that bit of information, and they keep being like, what's your backstory, Cora? We keep getting it. Stop. Stop telling us. We don't want to go through it again. So yeah, she shoots the youngest one. She goes on the run, and yeah, that's kind of where her backstory ends. Don't worry, there's a lot more backstory coming. As mentioned, Ed Skrein is alive again. He wants revenge. He wants to kill our hero because she used to be part of an army that he was part of or something. The Imperium. Sorry, like before. Never mind. It's time for our heroes to harvest crops in slow motion. So we get that epic choir music. I'm not joking. I laughed so hard this scene. That's a pause. It looks like, you know, like Guinness ads where they're like they're showing you what goes in the Guinness. It was like that, but it was so slow. You could play this movie like there's so much slow mo. I know this is beating a dead horse. There is so much slow motion in this movie. You could genuinely cut off like a half an hour. I'm not even joking. There's scenes where you're like, why is it in slow motion? Where like, and then you actually start doubting your senses. There's a scene where like Jim Hinsu is like drinking water, and I'm like, is that slow motion or regular motion? I actually couldn't tell. Was he moving? I was like, is he just moving slowly or is that slow motion? I got so confused. It was really weird. Then we get one of the most awkward things in the movie. So they've given up on actually defining the characters and making them work for us. So what they do, they decide like, hey, what's a good way of signaling what these characters are like? Because obviously after watching 3 hours of film at this point, you haven't got to know these characters in any way. So they have the village people, not the band. That would be much more
no, that would have been amazing.
They're going to bring him to the YMCA. Yeah,
the king has died. Quick, it's fun to stay.
Oh my God, that would have been amazing. That would have been most fun. So this little village girl, I should say, has stitched blankets. And it goes on for like 10 minutes where it's like, Cora, we stitch you this blanket, a blanket that represents your strength and nobility. You are so strong and noble too. They literally name their characteristics like they're handing it out at like the start of a Dungeons and Dragons game, like the stats. It's fucking weird. Like, it's so really, really lazy where they're all being handed blankets. And then you're like, what was this lady doing stitching blankets? I thought they were meant to like be harvesting crops and stuff. I should say, by the way, they're not just harvesting crops. They're also teaching poor villagers to fight. A Star Wars classic. It's so stupid. The thing is, when you do one of these montages, right, you would expect that you're meant to show them when they're really bad. So they get much better, right? This is what the montage is in Rebel Moon, okay? They're like, hey, you need to learn to shoot a gun. And the person shoots a gun and they do decent. And then the one's like, raise your arms. Oh, that time was perfect. Grand, that's great training. That was it. That was all she did. She's like, aim higher. And then that's it. Open both eyes. Oh, yeah, cool. Then that's it. That was her training. 50 seconds.
What I'd want from this is, no, do it, but much slower for no reason.
Oh, my God. Oh, trust me, there's a lot of that. God. Also, like, another one of their great training tips. Hey, stupid villagers with all the pointy, sharp weapons that you swing at all the crops all day long. It's literally all you do. Why don't you swing them at people? Wow, you guys are genius. Oh my God, I can see why these guys led armies. Oh my God, ridiculous. And now that that's all out of the way, we need to figure out everybody's backstory. I want to say I'm going chronologically here, and if it feels like I'm going slow, it's because it's in honor of the slow motion of Zack Snyder. Okay, but this is one of the worst and laziest scenes I've seen in any film ever. I'm not fucking around. They're all in a tavern. They're drinking. And then out of nowhere, Jimon Hinsu just says, if we're going to be fighting together, we must share the truth and know we're fighting alongside. Should also mention, because Zack loves himself some Jesus. He brought Superman back in like 3 days or whatever. He had Superman like die on the cross. He had him get stabbed by a spear. He has all of our characters sitting on one side of the table. The Last Supper. Oh, wow. I know it's totally impractical. So that aside, get ready for the character backstory time, everybody. Round it off. And I should say, all their character backstory is exactly the same. It's all like, hey, you know what? That evil Empire sure were dicks. They killed everyone I know. So that's why I'm fighting the Empire. I'm like, okay, cool. This could have been a memo. Jimon Hinsu was leading an army, and guess what? They got captured, and then they literally made him sit down and watch his army get blown up from space by a big evil laser. It shouldn't be funny.
An army for an audience of one.
It shouldn't be funny, but it really is, because he just has to sit there and just like everything just explodes, and he's like, no, and it's like... But the other thing is, it's like they let him live, and they don't like. I was waiting for that really cliche line where it's like, they knew there'd be a bigger suffering to let me live, knowing I cost these men their lives. No, they just let him live, I guess. They don't show that part. There's an ongoing thing here with all these backstories where, like, oh, if you hadn't surrendered, we would have been okay. Because I guess it's like, I'll never surrender now. Also, my favorite trope in any movie, anytime they do a flashback, they have to give him different hair. Jimon Hinsu was bald in the movie, so they have to give him hair. Don't worry, we're going to do a wig check for all of these. Our next character, a character I genuinely had not noticed before. I didn't realize it was I thought it was an extra the whole time, and then she's at the table. I was like, wait a minute, who's this? I had to stop the movie and look her up. I couldn't even recognize her from the descriptions on Wikipedia. I had to go to IMDb and find the actress. Milnius, she decides that she should tell her backstory, which is basically she hasn't fought before, and then people on the planet are like, hey, we're too weak, we can't fight, so they surrender. She shouldn't have surrendered, though. Oh, no, don't surrender. They get sent to work. The people who can't work, get killed. And she then gets freed and is like, hey, maybe I should fight because the rebels freed us. Maybe I should be a rebel. That's cool. Great backstory there. Milius, sorry, I called her name. Milius is her name.
You're even forgetting her name in real time.
I'm forgetting her name 10 seconds after I read it. The one character name I won't ever forget because it's so on the nose and stupid. We have a character who dumps their trauma on us next called Nemesis. That sounds like a robot from Robot Wars, which is appropriate because she's a cyborg swordmaster. She's basically, I should say, sorry, Milnius has longer hair. Milius had longer hair than she does now. Yeah. Also, Nemesis had longer hair. Doesn't anymore. See, time has passed. These characters really have grown and changed. They were peaceful people, but then the Imperium, I got it right that time. Look, I'm just going to call them the Empire. It sounds awkward every time I say the Imperium. The Empire come along. They ransack the village and kill everyone. It kind of implies that her daughter is killed as well. But they used to be peaceful, and then they weren't, is basically what she says. They say it in a more dramatic way. Here's what they say. We were a peaceful people, but we hadn't always been. Once, long ago, we were a people. Before, what was it? Before, well, we were a people that never killed before, never spilled. And then she says, I never spilled blood until I spilled my own, because she basically is saying all this dramatic shit as she takes these weird gauntlets out from under her bed. And I guess the gauntlets, the way they work is you have to cut your arm off. So she cuts her arm off to put the gauntlets on because, yeah, man, so cool, badass. So So yeah, she cuts off her own arm, attaches a cybernetic arm, and then yeah, she goes becomes a murderous revenge monster. And it's like when someone tells you like a superhero origin story in like 5 seconds, and you're like, sorry, go back there now. It happens so quickly where it's like we used to never kill anyone until we did. And I got robot arms and I got a sword, and you're like, what the fuck going on? It's like the blurb at the back of a toy box or an action figure where you're like, what the hell? This seems like it needs to be explored. Then we have Tarek. You might remember him as the guy who rode Buckbeak or whatever it was in the last film.
Yes.
I actually remember it was basically Avatar. So yeah, he was part of the nobility. His father died when the Empire attacked. His mother, the queen, refuses to run away but wants to preserve the bloodline on the throne. And then she just very slow motion. She's slowly in slow motion actually, which is double slow. She leaps to her death as the city is being destroyed, and then I think he just goes on the run and disappears. So I don't know what that's about. I genuinely was very confused by it. I was like, she's like, I want to preserve the bloodline. You should go away so there's no longer a real king here anyway. And it's a weird, it's like a nobility where it's like the 1930s for some reason. I don't understand it. Just a weird, Zack Snyder has a fetish for some things. I think he was like 1930s, yeah. I should say, sorry. He also has in a nice twist. He had less hair in the past. Now he's got loads of hair. So he's really, really twisting it up there. Big
progress isn't a straight line, Tom. It's deep.
That's
There's
true,
a lot of hidden meaning there. Yeah.
You see, it's because he's had trauma, so he's like, I can't cut my hair anymore.
Yeah.
It hurts too much. So yeah, that's, by the way, that was all one scene. That all happens after each single fucking thing. So they literally dump all the backstory on you in that scene as they're all sitting around the table. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in a movie. They all have horrible backstories with no depth. And I should mention, we're an hour into the film at this point. Nothing has happened. They've harvested grain and they've dumped all their trauma on us. We're only halfway through the movie. Nothing has happened. There's been no action. Oh, God. So yeah, the movie decides they probably should have some action. And the giant ship that they're like, they basically spent the whole movie with Ed Skrein like cutting back to him being like, hey, he's coming. Do you want to keep going to that planet? Yeah, I want to keep going because he's got nothing to do on this ship. He finally comes back to the planet and acts all villainous and realizes that the villagers' plan has been to put all the women and children in one place. So he's like, I could steal the women and children, like a Dick Dastardly villain. Like he's like going to tie them to the train tracks. Like, it's ridiculous. They scan. By the way, weirdly enough, they scan the village and they're like, that's where the women and children are, but they don't scan and are like, hey, that's where the grain we want is. We could just get the grain and then blow up the planet. No, it doesn't matter. He's like a child's version of a bad guy. He's like, I'm going to take the women and children. But he does offer Cora a chance. Turn yourself in and I'll spare the villagers. Now, I thought the movie was going to be really dumb and she was like, I'll never surrender, because that was the whole point of all their backstories. No, it turns out that backstory was even more relevant because that's not what happens. She's going to surrender, and then her lover, Gunnar, is like, shoots a bell, triggering the people to fight them off, so she can't surrender. She doesn't seem that mad about that. She just, it's fine. They just move on. It was just pointless. So yeah, lots of explosions. This is where the movie has a bit of action. This is the only thing that's slightly entertaining with the movie, is there is a lot of action. It's not good action. It's not well choreographed action. It's a lot of it in slow motion. The Empire try to take the women and children. Nemesis fights off the soldiers with her arms. I will say, like, the lightsabers in this just look like regular swords and weird kind of plasma stuff. They're not good. And I say this without exaggeration. This is one of the most obnoxious Zack Snyder scenes ever. It's like all slow motion, and it's like slow motion has its place. It can when it's on something cool, but this is just regular sword fighting in slow motion. It's just pointless. And our villain kills one of the few and most expendable villagers, which is handy, just to show he's really serious this time. Even though he was killed in the last movie, he's serious this time about being villain. But Nemesis gets killed. The women and children are saved. She manages to conveniently kill the last guy as she dies. So, the women and children are safe. Thank God. We wouldn't have wanted any, serious villainy through one. Even more pointless. Remember that Anthony Hopkins robot?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
he gave the intro. He's kind of just skulking around, as he was in the first film, where I was like, why did you get Anthony Hopkins to voice a robot that does nothing? He's meant to be like this. He used to be like a knight or something that used to kill other people. Now he's like dedicated to nature, which you can tell because he has branches sticking out of his head. Subtle. He's just there the whole time, and the village is like getting totally bombed. A load of people are being killed. It's totally fine with that. But then all of a sudden there's a giant mech goes, and I guess for no apparent reason, he's just triggered into action. He does, no joke. He just starts killing everything, wipes all of them out, and does a superhero landing for no reason. And then he looks back as if like, yeah, that's right. And I'm like,
Don't get to
Could
be
have done
caught.
that at any time, by the way. Could have just saved the whole village. No, you decided now is time. No explanation for why he just decided. Ugh, anyway, I should say all that's going on. Cora and Gunnar at this point have gone onto the evil ship that has Ed Skrein and the bad guys. You by sneaking on in another evil ship, they're infiltrating it and they're planting explosives. The ship starts blowing up. So our villain is called Atticus Noble, by the way. Another great Zack Snyder name. They have a big lightsaber fight that while the ship is crashing and exploding. And again, it does that weird thing which in Star Wars is weird, but it happens in space somehow. When it's not in space, it's even weirder. Where the ship, like, instead of like just exploding or just falling really quickly, it starts sinking. That kind of thing. So they're now sliding down the side of the ship on the inside, swinging lightsabers. Even George Lucas would have been like, "It's a bit much, isn't it?" Like prequel era George Lucas would have been like, "Hey, just pull back on that. It's a bit ridiculous." It then just becomes a punch up. The physics of it don't make any sense. I was genuinely confused about how they were able to propel themselves when I think they were on their side somehow. They should have been falling instead of walking, but I'm confused. It doesn't matter. Don't think about it too much. Cora slices his head off. So yeah, the villain you brought back and made a big deal about reviving is just so they can have one more fight for no real reason. That's it. Ridiculous. Also, Gunnar got stabbed. He's dead. Their love that lasted through the ages is suddenly over. I didn't even know they were a couple until there was a scene of them just lying in bed, to be honest. And I was like, oh, they're a couple. Okay, yeah, classic. So yeah, he just decided he's had enough and he dies. They get back and they escape the dreadnought, even though it really looks really ridiculous that they were able to, because the ship is like basically on the ground exploding and they just managed to get out anyway at some weird angle. I don't know. And then the rebel forces come along and crush the remaining Empire troops, and the village is saved, even though it would have been handy if the Empire troops had come beforehand, But anyway, the village is saved, yeah. They all mourn the dead. Cora admits that she killed that child. Dun, dun, dun!
Weird time to admit this.
Yeah, weird time to be like, they're all dead. And to be like, guess who else is dead? That child I killed.
I once killed a child. I'm trying to mourn my mother.
Yeah, they're like, hey, speaking of all the dead kids around here.
Yeah.
But Titus, who is Jimon Hinsu's character, is like, hey, guess what? That kid isn't dead. I don't know why he knows. They don't give any information on how she survives. She's mystical, I think. That's the vague explanation I'm picking up. And then they're just like, hey, do you know what we should all do? We should get that child and put her back on the throne and end the rule of the evil tyrant, Balsarius. I don't know. And then it ends with a threat of more Rebel Moon to come.
No, we're not there. Did they have a post-credit sequence?
I stopped. I did. If they do, I don't care. That was enough. As soon as it got to the credits, I was like, I'm glad that the credits are as long as they are, because at 2 hours, this felt like an eternity. I feel like it physically aged me. I should say as well, Zack Snyder is someone that we used to kind of leave a little bit of leeway with, because his story, like the stories, even if sometimes he was really bad writing stories, sometimes you'd be like, well, visually, he's a really good filmmaker. Throw that in the fucking bin at this point. Like, he's done cinematography for his last 4 films. He did it for the Snyder Cut of Justice League. He did it for Army of the Dead, the first Rebel Moon, and this one. Someone needs to take that camera off him, because he's using a camera that has a shallow focus. So like it's really detailed up front, and then everything in the back is so blurred, and it's so out of focus that it starts getting like bendy. Yeah. So it looks fake. It looks like it's on a green screen and someone's messed with the perspective or something. It looks really awful. It's a terribly shot film. It's I genuinely, I can't think of any redeeming feature in this film. It's the worst Zack Snyder film by far. I actually, here's the thing, I can actually remember parts of Rebel Moon. I don't think I'm going to remember anything about this movie except how angry it made me watching it. And I think that's the I don't know. Like people say, like if people say cinema is like meant to make you feel things, Zack Snyder is an artist, because I've never felt such anger and confusion. So this is cinema. I know, and we talked about bad movies before, and like, I think a good thing about bad movies is it really helps you like reset your barometer, where you're like, oh, a bad film, now I know what a good film is. I think definitely after this, it's really tuned my taste buds to like, wow, that's dog shit I just ate. It's awful. Yeah. Oh God. Don't watch it. Yeah. Even when I description, don't watch it ever. God.
And this segment doesn't exist to kind of go, is this actually a good movie? No, this segment exists to stress Tom out. And Tom,
Mm.
we thank you for watching this so we didn't have to. You have done us a good service. So we do take turns though. Again, you don't have to watch a movie this bad now unless you choose to for the next couple of months. So I'm willing to step into the seat. What have you got for
Oh,
me? Okay, my turn.
I gotta really up my take. So I was flicking through Rebel Moon because it's already very hard to find because people don't want to watch it. And I saw that Jennifer Lopez had a new movie out, and I was like, hey, that could be big budget sci-fi fucking action. He might
No.
enjoy that. You're not watching Atlas.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
not
that's
allowed to give you
good.
that.
That's
It's
good.
fairly
Okay.
terrible, but no, I want you to get to know J-Lo. I want you to find out if she's still Jenny from the block.
Oh no.
And I really hope it makes you as depressed as Ben Affleck picking up his Dunkin' Donuts as you watch her awkward romantic drama musical film based on her own life. This is
No.
me now, a love story. That's a title. It's a stylized fictional narrative inspired by Lopez's marriage to Affleck. Wow. It's I hope it brings you much sleepless nights, painful eyeballs,
Oh.
and yes, be lucky. It seems short on Rebel Moon, so you're welcome.
Oh.
Oh,
Oh, you have checkmated me, sir. This I'm enjoying this tete-a-tete. Wow. Well, I'm not gonna enjoy that. But okay, so I'm watching J-Lo's
you're gonna love it.
autobiographical musical. Yeah, okay, look, that's next month. Okay, so there are good movies coming out though next month. In particular, I'm looking forward to. I spoke about it earlier on. I'm genuinely, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Inside Out is a top five all-time movie for me. It is genuinely top five. And I was cynical when I heard about Inside Out 2 coming out. But I'm buzzing for it. I trust these creators implicitly. The movie was so well thought out and so perfect. And every time I rewatch it, I find 10 new things to appreciate about it all over again. And then they put out a clip of Ayo Edebiri, who I love. You may know her from the likes of The Bear, Bottoms, etc. She just doesn't miss. And also being Irish now, apparently, which is a new thing. They put out a clip of Ayo Edebiri playing Envy in the movie and just like some clips of her voicing beside it. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. I'm in. This is going to be great. I cannot wait for this. I've full faith in it. I'm not going to get my hopes up too much. I think I'm just going to try and not think about it because there's so much other content in June, and then just walk into the cinema and let them blow me away and bawl my eyes out. I'm sure all over again. But Inside Out 2 is a movie that I'm going to look to. Yeah, I might watch the JLo movie the night before, just to no matter how. Even if Inside Out 2 doesn't work, I'll have cleansed my movie palette with the JLo movie. But that's what I'm looking forward to in June. What's kind of on your radar in particular?
Yeah, there is. I don't know. Some of the again release dates are always awkward when I was like I could be looking at an American release date. I know like Kevin Costner might have his movie out.
Oh yeah.
Was it Horizon, an American Saga Chapter 1 or whatever? That could be good. It could be shit. I don't know. A Quiet Place prequel coming out.
Mm,
Again, I'm not sure how I feel about it, but it could be good. I'd like the other Quiet Place films. Main one for me, aside from Inside Out 2, which I'm also really looking forward to, is I'm hoping Yorgos Lanthimos' new film is going to be out for us. Kinds of
yes.
Kindness. That was his last film, Poor Things, was my favorite film of last year. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping this is going to be good. It seems like it's got good reaction, or nothing else. It seems like bonkers. So that'll be enjoyable. If nothing else.
Yes. Great show. Great show. I can't wait for that. 28th of June, I think it's out over here in Lighthouse anyway, if anyone is up in the Dublin area. So check it out. Yeah, that's going to be great. Tom, what do you got on the Pop Cult Pod?
Yeah, it's been a quiet month here actually, mainly because I'm working on stuff behind the scenes. Summer is my busy month, and we're just kind of getting into it there now. So I would hope that I'm going to have some stuff out by the next time we record. Maybe multiple things. I have a few things. I'm always really bad at saying I'm doing something, and then it doesn't happen. But something I'm pretty confident is going to happen. I haven't announced it yet, but I'm going to just say we're going to do our own version of Shark Week.
Ooh,
And yeah,
okay.
wherever your imagination goes, it's probably not where my imagination goes, but it's going to be interesting.
Okay,
But yeah, we're going to
interesting.
have a Shark Week.
Check it out, Pop Go Pod. You can get the link in the show notes. Always a pleasure. And there's even if there's no recent new content, there's an archive full of fun stuff up there. Tom, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. On page 180. You can also exclusively reveal. We've had a discussion, and if you've been listening to every show, you may notice I've been putting together some sort of a super team for a summer project of sorts. So, Tom, very proud to announce will be a part of that potentially. Keep one eye out in the future. Next time on page 180, Star Gears returns next week to discuss the 2-episode premiere of The Acolyte. Cannot wait for that. I had to turn down going to the premiere last night because fucking Fiorentina were in the Conference League final and we fucked it up with one of the worst football matches ever, and I turned down that. And Jerry has got to see this before me, so I'm raging. But yeah, I'll have caught up by the next time you hear us on page 180. Until then, thank you, Tom, as always, for joining us. That's been May at the Movies. This has been page 180, and I had no choice. I had to do some Jason Bourne shit.